that time, where were you at in your heart when it comes to your abortion at Chosen? Was it something on the forefront? Was it something that was plaguing you?
It was buried. Yep, buried deep. I was still in a place of denial about it. At the anniversary, if you want to call it that, it would kind of come up a little bit, but that's really the only time that I would think about it. So going into this conference, I was not thinking about it at all.
Right, like you weren't here like, man, I need some healing.
No,
like,
I went to the conference because my boss told me to go to the conference. That's really why I went. But I don't know their names. And the one lady to my right, she was like, "Oh, sweetheart," and she just hugged me like the most mothering, nurturing hug. And they laid hands on me and they prayed. They anointed my head with oil, and it was definitely a chain breaking prayer. Like as they're praying for me, I just feel I'm like dejected. I'm standing there like my head is down, and the one lady actually did like put her hand under my chin and kind of like raise my head. And so by the end of the prayer, I'm like standing up with my arms raised, like just, my whole physical being just like rose as they were praying. I could feel God's like love on me. And after they prayed, the woman to my right was like, "Sweetheart, I want you to know I've had 2 abortions." And she was like, "God forgives me. He says He's set me free, and He's doing the same for you." And then if you've had an abortion, my hope is that my story could show you like there is healing, there's forgiveness, there's redemption, and God can make you a new creation if you surrender it all to Him.
Just because I don't believe or agree doesn't mean I can't learn from you.
Why did you have to bring that up?
Okay, that one I'm super embarrassed about.
Do you like me?
Do I like you?
Yeah.
As an individual or as a podcast?
Just as a person.
No, I like you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I don't have any interest in appearing to be stronger than I am.
I ain't bow to Nebuchadnezzar's statue. He gonna lead. You feel me?
How do we love people who see the world differently than we do?
What would it look like if we truly loved all of our neighbors? Could listening to their stories be the first step? This is Seacoast Church, and there's way more to talk about.
All right, welcome to the Seacoast podcast, everyone. We're back with the same crew we had last week, and today you guys get to hear a Seacoast story. How familiar are you guys with Peyton Pickens? Very familiar?
I know Pepe.
Yeah, Pepe.
Yeah, our girls are besties.
Yeah?
Nice. They were only born 5 days apart, but when they moved here, they were in the same class as Little Coasters, and they are still best friends.
That's cool.
It's the best.
With Chosen right around the corner, she actually shares a story. It's pretty crazy. She had an abortion. If I have the years right, it was about 10 years ago-ish. But it was something that she just never dealt with emotionally, spiritually, and God really used the ministry that was going on at Chosen to release her from that. So people are in for a treat of a story to just really hear how God just steps in and says, I'm going to rescue you, and you didn't even necessarily ask for this kind of rescue, but love it. I have a question for Jack, and I don't know if you guys are aware of this. I know generally you are aware of just how fast technology is moving with AI and everything, but Jack, just a reminder to our listeners, is the creative director. So, basically when it comes to creativity at Seacoast, Jack is the guy. And I needed some sort of graphic design, non-Seacoast, so I wasn't breaking any kind of rules, but I just typed in AI graphic design, and I just wanted to see what would pop up. I knew stuff would pop up, but I didn't know how much of a ordeal it would be if I would have to pay something. I typed in basically what kind of words needed, the exact words that needed to be on it, and then some keywords, and got literally close to 1,000 decent graphic designs. Now, I will say I'm not a good judge for whether or not they were good. Like your team would be able to look at it and say this is quality stuff. But we know if it isn't, the time is coming very soon where it's going to be top of the line stuff. Like are graphic designers, like, is this somewhat of, and they're just one of many fields, but you work with these people who went to school for this stuff. Their livelihoods are based on their ability to produce graphic visual content. AI is just going to take that away. Like, at some point, if we know that AI can make better designs than any person, would we spend money on people at Seacoast, for instance?
Yeah. Well, so it's not going to go away. It's going to change. The ability of every single person who has a smartphone to take quality pictures and video has not led to the death of the photography industry. It's like plenty of people are still willing to pay a lot of money for professional to take their pictures. I've got a friend who's a professional photographer, and she does not have enough time in her schedule for everyone who wants to use her. So I think what AI will do with art, at least, is it's going to change it. But AI is still the product of human minds, and my view is AI doesn't actually create anything. AI just spits out imitations. Creativity requires humanity, and now that's not like a objective fact I can just lay out. I would say most people would disagree, probably. Well, they'd be wrong.
He just went from it's a belief I have to no, they would be wrong.
Well, sure. Well, yeah, and that's what I believe. I don't think it's possible to create in the truly creative sense unless you have a soul, because I think creating is a human activity. Making things is different. Like, a machine can make things, but it's not true creation. Now, and it's not like a, hoity-toity. It's like, and therefore, this will always be better. It's like, no, like, human designers are going to have to adapt and figure out, like in the thing we did with Mal Fletcher, I think one of the things he said that was right is what's going to happen is creatives are going to be the ones to figure out how to use AI as a tool that enhances what they are doing. Because people who are using AI right now who aren't creatives, it's garbage. It's just trash. In the same way as like the kind of pictures I take with my phone compared to what a professional photographer does, it's like might be good enough for me, but it's not like good photography. And right. And so, and in the same way, it's like what the film team does and what real filmmakers do. The tools that have come around in the last 20 years, they're the ones who are really figuring out how to use those. And I think the same thing is going to happen with writers and artists with AI, is those creators are going to find the ways to really use those in creative ways. Now, there are a ton of non-creative ways that I think AI can be used. Like, there's a ton of clerical work, and if you would pay a low-level 18-year-old intern to do it, I think AI is a great solution for that. But if you need judgment, and if you need someone who actually has to discern what is best and what's wise and what is make a judgment call, don't have AI make judgment calls. It doesn't know how to do it. But the example I'm giving is a simple. I need a bunch of examples, and now I get to pick. So if I find one that I like out of 1,000, the chances, first of all, are pretty high for me to be able to do that. It just seems like I'm just one person. If tons of people do that, I didn't call a graphic designer. I still might. But I'll tell you what's going to happen. So have you guys had this experience over the last couple of years? Anytime I go to buy something on Amazon now, I got to be really careful and really look at it, because 90% of what hits in the search results for Amazon is actual trash. It's just drop shipping stuff from these little pop-up companies overseas that basically just manufacture garbage. To actually find good stuff on Amazon, you actually have to dig a little bit. And the same thing's going to happen with AI design, is to actually find the good stuff. Like, you're going to actually need to do more and more, because it's going to be flooded with garbage. Yeah. And so, and the prevalence of it's going to mean like, oh, hey, all your stuff looks the same, and people don't actually want that. They want to feel distinctive. So I do think it's going to change things. I don't think it's a doomsday thing for creatives, because creatives are going to be the ones to figure out how to actually use it and take their stuff up a level.
Yeah. That's interesting. Isn't that crazy though? I mean, just how it was, and I didn't. Now I would have had to pay to download it, but I didn't have to go through any steps to see tons and tons
that's
of art.
the other deal, though, is you didn't want to pay for it.
Well,
if I get it approved, I'll pay for it, and it was literally going to be like $5.
But my point is, most people won't want to pay for it.
$5?
And so,
if they like it?
Yes, 100%.
As opposed to like $800 for the same thing with a graphic designer?
No, as long as there's a free option, people will take the free option.
Gosh.
No, they will. And that's why, like again, a lot of free stuff is just trash, but it's what people will pay for, which is nothing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Do you know who Kareem Abdul Jabaar is?
No.
Do you know?
This is what he does. This is what we're talking about one thing,
just a
and then
reminder
he'll look at you and you'll say,
everyone.
"Hey, how about this non sequitur? React to that."
What do you want me to do? Say, as we transition on, I would like to bring up basketball and legacy and the sort of things that you have to sacrifice in order to achieve legacy.
Yeah, that
and
sounds like a
greatness.
normal human way of segueing into something else.
That hurt my feelings.
Say the name again.
Kareem Abdul Jabaar.
Okay, I'll be honest. The way you just said that, T, and the way you said it, those were two different names.
Say it again, T.
I do know that name.
You know
whatever you were saying the first time. I
said
nothing.
Kareem Abdul Jabaar.
No, that was even more pronounced the second time than the first time.
So he's saying it right?
I mean, he just
So who is he?
You said one word.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Kareem Abdul Jabaar. He said Kareem Abdul Jabaar.
Probably because it's three names.
Yeah.
First, middle, last.
You're don't worry about it. He's older.
Okay, so
it's
here's the
okay
thing.
if you don't know.
This is a common conversation in my house because it sounds familiar, but then my husband will look at me and be like, "How do you not know that?" I'm like,
I think it's
I
fascinating.
don't know, but also you're someone who remembers baseball stats from when you were like 4, so this feels unfair.
Exactly. No, I think it's fascinating when people know something so much, because I just love sports so much. It's fascinating to think
he's going to be so embarrassed by me.
No, come on,
he
Abbie.
is going to be. I'm saying my husband.
You know who
is gonna
Kareem
be
Abdul
embarrassed.
Jabaar is, correct? All right. Do you know what his name was before he was Kareem?
Oh, is this like an Ocho Cinco situation?
Jack hates when he knows something, but he doesn't know it on the spot. It drives him crazy.
I'm not and I'm not really a sports person, but I like I'm not going to get there.
It's on the tip of your tongue.
It's in there. No, it's not on the tip of my tongue. It's in my head somewhere, but I'm not going to get there.
It's Lou Alcindor.
Lou Alcindor.
So Jack, I bet it got kicked out when you were asked about stars.
That's what it was. That
You have to listen next week.
Replaced.
All right, so we're short on time here, so I want to make an observation, and it started when I was watching a documentary on the great Kareem Abdul Jabaar. I'll just, for some of you listeners who may just be dabbling in NBA basketball, he is considered as possibly the greatest of all time. Most people, it's just down to LeBron and Jordan. A lot of the old schoolers would say, don't forget about Jabar. So I was watching a documentary, and really just unbelievable guy. He has, I think, to this day, sold all of his championship rings, MVP trophies, and given it to, good purposes, nonprofits, and that sort of thing. So just very active in a lot of good things, and just a crazy, unbelievable basketball player. Well, in the documentary, they ask him, and please, listeners, don't take this as me coming down on Kareem at all. It's just an observation that really got me thinking. They asked him about his kids, and he said, well, my kids really, they see me more as uncle. Like, I'm not dad, I'm more Uncle Kareem. And he wasn't upset about that. It didn't move into a deeper part of the story where him and his kids, didn't have a good relationship. Said it with a smile, moving on to something else. And I was like, first of all, to have that sort of greatness and to do what he did with, I guess, Milwaukee Bucks and LA Lakers, all that traveling and everything, you can't achieve that kind of greatness unless unless almost everything else in your life takes a sacrifice. It seems like almost everything. And so I thought about it, and I was like, man, like all of these people that we revere, look up to, like people that have achieved greatness in sports or science or, whatever have you, they had to sacrifice like crazy. And is that worth it? Is it worth it to him to be like, I'm one of the most historical basketball players of all time, but my kids don't even see me as dad? So that got me thinking. So this leads to something else. LeBron is constantly, you know who LeBron James is, right? Abbie's like,
No, wait, make her answer the question, though.
Yes.
Make her answer.
He's throwing shade at you right now.
I know, it's shifted to me now.
Come on, Abbie. Nobody cares that you don't know about Kareem Abdul Jabar.
No, my husband does care. That's the issue.
Gotcha. Oh, and you're never going to live this down.
No.
Abbie, in your defense, he retired before you were born.
Oh, thanks. Cool.
Or around about that time.
Yes. So LeBron James, he recently got booted out of the playoffs pretty early. And for people who say, he's still on top of his game, he gets a lot of criticism for why are the Lakers out. Well, there is a press conference where he literally says, hey, at the end of the day, is just basketball. So I saw all sorts of things like, oh, what a champion. Oh, that's King James, greatest basketball player of all time, just got booted from the playoffs, and he has that kind of attitude. And then it shows like Michael Jordan and Kobe and how they handled a loss. And it's just like, I'm not smiling. I think one of them was one game shy of winning the championship. And they're just like, I'm not happy. I'm not, just like, oh, that's a champion. And it got me thinking, what if there is a respectable characteristic of LeBron that we're overlooking, that maybe basketball does not own him in the same way that it owns other people? Now, I know we're mixing up all sorts of subjects because LeBron has achieved greatness and he had to sacrifice tons to get there. But I was really taken back when I saw LeBron ridiculed for basically telling the whole world basketball is not everything. And so let's back up to Kareem. When it comes to that sort of greatness, to be able to say in this field, and it's a big, significant field. It's not like hopscotch, like a big deal. Hey, in this field, I am one of the best, if not the best. Doesn't everything else in your life have to sacrifice big time? Like, in that kind of common sense, yes?
Yeah.
And I guess, would you say with this specific example and Kareem, who represents thousands, tens of thousands of other people, should we pause before just celebrating greatness? Is it healthy also to think along the lines of, was all the sacrifice good? Isn't that a good evaluation? Like when you think of someone like Kareem, a big sports guy, does it make you think at a deeper level as far as like not like we're Christians, we don't have any reason to judge someone like Kareem, so I don't mean it in that way, but doesn't it make you second guess, maybe not all greatness was worth getting there with what you had to sacrifice?
Well, it depends on the person.
Like, imagine if your daughter said, oh yeah, he's like my uncle. That'd break your heart.
It would. However, if I grew up in the situation that Kareem grew up in, or I'll take my own situation. If I grew up and I knew that I would be able to bust my butt to be able to provide generational wealth that would change not only my kids' financial future, but my grandkids and my great-grandkids, I would take that risk. And then I would build that relationship with my daughter and be the grandparent. I would be a better grandparent than I was parent. And for some people, it's worth it. And for a lot of people, like LeBron, it's not. LeBron's main thing is family. Like, it's been family since he was in high school. He's been bringing his boys along for the ride the whole time. Like Maverick Carter, that was his boy since they were knee-high. And they ride together. But for like Jordan, it wasn't that. It was, I'm going to be the best and I'm going to set my family up for whatever. Is Jordan the dad that LeBron is? Probably not.
Yeah, and it really blows my mind, and I will get fired. Josh Surratt is a huge Bulls Michael Jordan fan, so this is it. This is my last episode. But it blows my mind. I hear so many people say, and they talk about it like everybody agrees. Well, I mean, LeBron's just not likable like Jordan. And I'm like, if you dig a little bit deep into who Michael Jordan is as a person, like, to me, LeBron's way more likable. I don't got any beef with Michael Jordan, but as far as like how they live their lives and the sort of perspective that they both seem to have as far as like how they represent themselves, I think LeBron's more likable.
Nobody's going to question that LeBron's not more likable than Jordan.
Oh, I've heard tons of people.
You can look at the Oprah episode with like Charles Barkley, who's Jordan's best friend, and they legit love each other and hate each other all at the same time.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Like, it's the funniest thing you'll ever see.
Yeah. Well, Jordan, like the charisma that Michael Jordan had as a player and the charisma that LeBron has as a player, they're different kinds.
Yeah.
And so I think, for me, so I grew up actually in Naperville, right outside Chicago, in the mid-'90s, like right in the middle of that era of Jordan with the Bulls, like the 2 3-peats. Like that's when I was there.
Jeez.
And, like that was everything. And I think, it is possible to achieve greatness and still invest in your family. Lots of people have done it. But I think, here's what I would say. I do think that we overestimate how much is required for greatness. You can achieve greatness and not be monomaniacal about it. Like some of the great leaders in our history, like I think like Abraham Lincoln was a good father. So was Theodore Roosevelt. Like and like, well, I guess, boy, how much greatness did they sacrifice? It's like not a whole lot, really.
Would you say Kareem did it the wrong way?
So I don't know enough about Kareem. Like Jordan, again, the 90s was really my era when I really paid attention to basketball. But I think that part of the deal is, look, some guys aren't monomaniacal about achieving greatness, but they're also just not super interested in being a dad. So, I don't know if that's true of Kareem, but I do think that's part of it, because if you are really determined to be a good father, it's really not a complicated trade-off. It's really not a difficult trade-off. Now, I'm fully committed, to Seacoast in my work and the ways that I serve above it, like that we all serve, above and beyond what is next to our job description on a piece of paper. But I would say for me, like my family is where if I achieve greatness, that's where I want to achieve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jack. That's good stuff. I think you need to maybe excuse yourself, so we'll be a little unorthodox and excuse you.
Oh, thanks for making the thing.
But everybody on YouTube, including us, we're going to watch.
Quick exits with Freddie. You can explain that one.
Hey, I'm glad you have something that's more important than podcasting right now.
Listen, everything is more important than spending time with you. But.
Dang.
We'll close this here, and this is and I want you to chime in too, T. But we'll use Abbie as the example. But I want this to all make us think and get the wheels turning. Tell me your husband's name again.
Mark.
So amazing dude, like me some Mark.
He's got a good beard. It's
nice and bald, right? Didn't you just say that he recently?
Okay. But we do a 3 guard.
Gotcha, 3 guard.
So in my head, yes, but
gotcha.
no.
All right, so it I would assume just as an observer, you would put him in a category of a good dad.
He's the best.
The best dad. If he had an opportunity to achieve Kareem Abdul Jabaar type greatness in some sort of field that was very effectual financially, like T was talking about, generational wealth, and could change drastically the field that he also cares about. Like, hey, he could actually really change it forever. And let's just throw an arbitrary number out there. Let's say he's going to be 35% less involved with the family. So that doesn't sound that huge of a drop-off. It doesn't mean that he's going to be a bad dad. It just means that the involvement that you're seeing and experiencing right now is going to drop off about a third. But there's a lot of upside also. Like, how do you even navigate that thought? Like, would you say that would be possibly a worthy sacrifice? You're like, no, I wouldn't want any less. Tough question, right?
Not for him. He would not take dollar amount.
So money has nothing to do with it for your husband, yeah.
he travels a little bit for his work. And when we had our second kid, he was like, I do not want to do this, but we make it work because he loves his job. And we go back and forth because he's like, the promotion would mean more money, but he doesn't want, like, it just isn't what he wants. And so I think for Mark, if he was going to be convinced of anything to set us up, it wouldn't be give me X amount of dollars. It would be like, I don't even want to say tangible things, but it would be like, let me farm land and give me the land to farm. Let me have time to work on my car. Like, it would be a time thing. And it would be, let me spend more time with my kids.
Yeah.
I don't care how much I get paid. Our bills covered. Awesome. That's it. That's all he cares about. And I appreciate that. It's one of the things that, like, I just love so much because we kind of talk about it like, yes, we're unconventional in like our parenting. We actually joke. So one of our friends' kids, they spent the night at our house one time and I was cooking dinner and Mark was playing with them and they go, Mark, why is she cooking dinner? And he was like, what do you mean? And she goes, well, why is Abbie cooking dinner and not you? And like, because in their house, dad cooks dinner and mom never cooks.
Yeah.
And Mark was like, oh, we don't have any roles that one of us does and one of us doesn't. It's more of just like, I like doing this, so we do it. But like, genuinely, his priority is the kids. And I think it is by far one of the best qualities of him. And so I think if someone was like, I'd give you $5 million, he'd be like, can I actually get like $5 million worth of land to farm? And the resources to farm it rather than just like, hand me the cash kind of thing. Or if they just handed you the cash, like he would use that to do that. He's an environmentalist, environmental scientist. And so everything is, take care of the world, and
he's a smart guy.
We have to fix it, and we've done a lot, but we can do it. We can fix it, and so even just in that,
right. So there's nothing there's nothing career oriented for you personally when it comes to Mark that would be worth any less than what he's giving right now, because what he's giving right now is the most important thing. Yeah.
I mean, I saw this stat and couldn't give you the source, but it said that dads today are spending 30% more time with their kids than their dads spent with them. And I'm like, my parents are incredible people. I'm very thankful that I had a great childhood, and I don't feel like my dad was absent. But then I started thinking about it and I was like, whoa, he was not absent. I mean, he made every game. He was home for dinner every night. Like, he did those things. But then even just looking at but he worked way longer hours because that's what he had to do for our family. And we just spent a lot more time with my mom. And I think that's just a generational thing. But now Mark's looking at it and he's like, this is the most important thing. And it's going to be these kids. Yep. And I mean, they're besties. It's the best thing to see him with, especially our girl.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Wrapping this thing up with our Kareem discussion, like, do you think that it is, because you flipped it around. I mean, you basically, because I think how I described it, even though it's not my intent, I think most people would hear that as maybe more in the selfishness territory of, oh, okay, so basketball is your thing, family, distant second, where you actually added the perspective of, he could have been thinking, hey, I could change the trajectory of my family for decades and centuries to come if I go this route. So either way, there's a sacrifice. In fact, it's interesting. Like, one time, Priscilla and I were getting counsel from Pastor Chip, and he pretty much said, a lot of times you have to pick, and obviously Kareem's dealing with way more money, so take that in mind with this example. But he basically said you have to pick what sort of stress sometimes. Is it going to be time stress because you're working a lot of extra and then you don't have the financial stress? Or is it going to be financial stress because you don't want the time stress and you're going to work less? But like, when you look at Kareem Abdul Jabaar, it may have just been one path that has strengths and weaknesses to it.
Yeah. I mean, because I didn't have that dad figure, I'd be like, Kareem didn't do it right. Like, you could have been, there are lots of guys in the NBA, because that's what we're talking about, that are great parents, seemingly. Like, I think of Jason Tatum. Every time you see Jason Tatum, you see Deuce. You didn't necessarily see that with Kareem. Now, things have changed, transportation, all of that, different time, I get it. But there's no amount of money that I could put on the time that I spend with my kid right now. Like, she's got a game tonight. There's nothing more satisfying as a parent than watching your kid thrive in something that they love. Mm-hmm. And to miss that, there's not enough money that would make me want to miss that. Mm-hmm. And for them to call, like if Malia were to just call me T or Tomelex and not Dad, that would crush me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm sure she'd get over it if she never had to work again.
Yeah. Right.
You know, so, right. I mean, I don't know what his motives were. I just know, me personally, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and please, listener, I think I've made it clear, but it's not picking on a particular person as much as it's just evaluating greatness, what it takes to get there, whether the sacrifice is worth it. Kareem, you wouldn't even bat an eye. Top 10 for sure.
Yeah.
How about top 5 for sure?
No.
No.
Nope.
That's where it stops?
Yeah.
All right. Give me your top 5.
Jordan,
MJ, Kobe,
LeBron. Russell.
Magic.
Well, that number 5 spot is hard because you got Magic,
Wilt.
You got Shaq.
Mm.
I know him.
He's like, I know that
one. You got guys that like changed roles because of how great they were. So
yeah.
It would be interesting to have, like, you were just saying, like, what if he could, like, do greatness in today's society? Like, I feel like I see so many, like, incredible, athletes in this situation, but, like, their kids are following.
Yeah.
I saw this video of, like, one of the Olympians, like, he won an Olympic gold, and, like, it was a video of, like, his kids standing on the sideline, like, watching. Like, how cool for them to see that, like, you can have both.
Right.
You can be a great dad, and then, like, you just won Olympic gold. Like, that's insane. So he obviously worked really hard, sacrificed a lot to get to that point. But then his kids, he had the ability to bring his kids to watch. And so it's like, maybe if it was 2024 and everyone had private jets or private transportation, and they were like, you can bring as many people as you want instead of just like, so like.
Yeah.
Would you be upset with me if I closed the episode out with asking you basic sports questions that I knew you wouldn't know?
Nope, I'm not upset.
You got
but
this,
I will
Abbie.
hear it from my husband if I do terribly.
Oh, I can really do it?
Go for it.
All right, let's do this.
Almost nothing is off limits.
What sport, Nolan Ryan?
Oh, gosh, nothing. Oh, no. Is it really baseball?
Yeah.
Oh, this is terrible because my husband's a huge baseball fan. That's his sport, so
All right, we're going to get a little harder. Wink, wink. Babe Ruth. What
baseball.
Sport? Oh, look out. Mickey Mantle.
Are you just throwing baseball people at me again?
Is that baseball?
Yes.
Okay. Jackie Robinson?
You're just throwing baseball people at me now.
So
42.
All right.
Come on.
She watched the movie.
James Worthy.
Football.
Oh, that stumped her.
You got it.
I'm just totally guessing.
Let's
you can tell in my answers when I'm like, oh yeah, I know that.
So we're wrapping the episode up. Let's get easier and easier with basketball. So she didn't know James Worthy. Let's get a step easier. How about, I'm thinking basketball. Now she knows it's basketball, so that was dumb of me.
I'm going to know nothing about basketball. Okay?
John Elway.
I grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Okay, you looked at me like I was stupid, but you also didn't.
What about Allen Iverson?
Oh, that's a good one.
That's basketball.
Oh, look out.
And it's because I'm pretty sure he was in the documentary that I watched about Jordan.
Look out.
He was.
He was.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm not a total failure.
Thank
You're
y'all.
not a failure at all. Remember, positive
Thanks,
words.
Pastor
Abbie.
T. I needed that.
Oh, well, so it's Peyton Pickens.
Yes.
And what campus are, I don't know anything about you. So,
yeah, so I work on the local missions team here at the Mount Pleasant campus.
And how long have you been here?
Since September of 2023.
Okay.
So coming up on a year.
What's so crazy. It's weird that I'm meeting you for the first time. And sorry if we have. I mean, if we've met, it's been like a handshake.
No, yeah, we haven't
sort
yet,
of thing. Yeah. But I mean, so I came on staff in 2005, so almost 20 years ago, and it is so interesting. I mean, I've said this a few times on the podcast, but it is really weird being in a place to where there's so many people I haven't met because the staff is so huge.
It's impossible. I feel like.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So you are here. You've been here for about, you said 2023 of what month?
September.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So coming up on a year.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so what's kind of your day-to-day here? Like what?
Yep. So I work with Jen Cameron, the local missions pastor. We do a lot of outreach. So we try to be in the building the least amount possible. We like to be out with our community partners. And then we do our Acts 4 program, our benevolence program. We manage that. And we get a lot of emails from people that are just in need. A lot of homeless, a lot of domestic violence situations. There's just a great need. Even in Mount Pleasant, people would drive through here and think that there isn't need just by looking around, but there is great need. And so we're really focused on reaching the homeless, vulnerable children and families, and taking the gospel out of the four walls of the church. So day to day, I'm admin, work mainly, but I do get the opportunity to go with Jen to our community partners, talk to them, see their needs, see how we can meet their needs. And then obviously like the big, Thanksgiving, Christmas, those big times of the year, we're boots on the ground here and doing like journey bags. That was my first Thanksgiving this past one, and it was crazy. I've never seen people cook 3,000 meals, and it was beautiful. It was crazy, but it was beautiful. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and so you grew up where?
In Pennsylvania.
So give us like a snapshot of how you ended up here.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in a small town in Pennsylvania called York. It's southern PA. When I was about 22, I started to feel like I was kind of hitting a ceiling. I had worked in D.C. for a little bit out of college, and I felt like I wanted somewhat of a big city feel, but still kind of that like small town feel as well. And my aunt lived here. She's been here for like 16 years. So I had come and visit her many times. So I thought that Charleston would be a good place to come and explore, see if I like it. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up meeting my husband. So now I'm here.
There you go.
So now I'm here. But I do love it. But I really just came to kind of see what else was out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so did y'all end up coming to Seacoast as far as just, hey, let's see what the church life is out, or what kind of churches are around, and just kind of picked here, tried here?
Yeah, my aunt has been a member here since this whole time. Shout out Amber Lombardi.
There you go.
She's been a member here, so every time I would come and visit, she's like, we're going to church. And back home, my dad is a preacher, so he has a church back in Pennsylvania, and it's on a farm, and it's like 40, 50 people. So coming here, I was like, what is this? Like, what is this? But I think anybody who steps foot inside that sanctuary can attest, like, it is Holy Spirit filled. You walk in, you feel the presence of God. So even though it was like really outside of my comfort zone, I felt like I can serve God here. Mm-hmm. Like I can meet with him here every week. And so it may not be your cup of tea, but the Spirit is here. Absolutely. Absolutely. For Amen. Sure. Yeah. So I loved it. And now I do like how big it is, because there is, anytime someone comes to me and is like, I lost my husband, I need something. I'm like, grief share. Or, my marriage is struggling, re-engage. Like, there is something for everyone. And I do love that about a big church. Like, there's always something. Yeah. So, yeah, for sure. So how did you, I tell you what's your current family life? As far as I've heard you, just since you've been in the studio, you've mentioned your husband. Yep. You have a daughter. I do. So is that the three of you right now? The three of us. She's two, which is why I laugh. Yeah. Because every day is a blessing. Every day is crazy. No, but I do have a 2-year-old. And so it's just the three of us. And then his mom lives here. He has family in Florence. Okay. But we have family like Pennsylvania, Florida, Jersey. So we're all kind of spread out, but I've built a really good community here in church and small group. So I have chosen family as well that we've been able to make and meet. It's just the three of us right now, and he wants a
How long have y'all
second,
been
but we've been married a little over a year.
Nice.
So we did do things a little backwards.
Yeah.
We had my daughter out of wedlock, but the story I'm sharing today is why I chose to just have her.
Yeah.
Unashamedly, because I wasn't going to go back to what I had done before.
Right.
But
well, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. And what chosen conference are we talking about specifically when it comes to how God kind of shook things up in your life for the better?
Yeah, it was the 2023 conference. So I started September 11th, and that Thursday was the conference. So I started the week of chosen. And so, my first day of work, my boss was taking me around, and that was Eden was the theme of that. And my boss was taking me around, and I'm like, they're turning the church into a literal garden. Like, what is going on here? She's like, it's chosen. And she asked if I had ever gone. I had not. And so she told me she wanted me to go one time as an attendee first before I would work it in the future as staff. And so that Thursday, 4 days after I started working, I attended the conference. And that's kind of where everything started off. I don't know if you want me to.
So at that time, where were you at in your heart when it comes to your abortion? And we'll get into when that was and everything. But currently at Chosen, was it something on the forefront? Was it something that was plaguing you?
Yeah.
Was it something you were thinking about constantly?
It was buried. Buried deep. I was still in a place of denial about it. Right after it had happened, in order to kind of cope, I just put myself into a place of denial and shoved it very deep down. And so it wasn't something that I really thought about. Like on the anniversary, if you want to call it that, it would kind of come up a little bit, but that's really the only time that I would think about it. So going into this conference, I was not thinking about it at all.
Right. You weren't here like, man, I need some healing.
No, I went to the conference because my boss told me to go to the conference. That's really why I went.
Gotcha. All right. Well, take us back in time.
Yeah.
And I have no idea when, what was your life like? How were you doing just in general? Would you say you were relatively healthy? Just give us kind of a snapshot of who you were back in the day and what led to what we're talking about.
Sure. So right after my freshman year of college, I came home for the summer and I went to a friend's party, and there was a guy there that I knew from high school, and we just kind of reconnected, and we're talking about school, and I liked him. We kind of started to date very casually, and at that time, with my relationship with Christ, I grew up in the church. My dad is a pastor, and I did love God, but not enough to set aside my own will and my desires. And so when I went to college my freshman year, I didn't attend church. I took my Bible with me. I'm pretty sure it sat on my nightstand the whole time, didn't get opened. And so I wasn't rejecting God by any means, and I wasn't, didn't have hostile feelings towards him, but I was not pursuing a relationship with him. I wasn't in my word. And so I was during this time, I don't know if 2010 to 2013, there was this YOLO.
Whoa. Let me stop here. You were in college in 2010,
I graduated 2013. So 2013 to 2014, I was my freshman year of college.
So hopefully this is, I would imagine to any woman, this is a compliment, but so you're 10 years removed from college?
Yeah, I'm 28.
My gosh.
How would you think I was?
I mean, if you stop me on the street and just ask me how old do you think I am, I would say early 20s for sure.
Black don't crack unless you smoke it. As Pastor T says.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear.
Yeah. So I was definitely YOLOing. I was, you only live once, follow your heart. That was kind of my mantra.
Yeah.
And so when I met him, very quickly, the relationship, turned intimate, and I was 18, he was 21, and I did feel like I wanted validation. It wasn't that I was I wasn't really into all of that, but I wanted him to love me.
Mm-hmm.
So we were intimate, and then I just woke up one day and literally knew. Like, I wasn't late. Didn't have any symptoms. I genuinely woke up and was like, I'm pregnant. And I don't know where it came from, but, I went to work. After work, I stopped by CVS. I got a test. 2, I took them, and they both came up positive.
And you're still 18?
I'm 18. Yep, I'm living with my mom and my stepdad. Like, I'm a child. I'm an adult in name, but I'm a child. So I called him because I didn't have the nerve to tell him in person. And when I called him, I just was like, I've got to talk to you. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm pregnant. And his first response was, okay, I can get you $500. Like, very nonchalant. And the fact that I was so naive that I didn't know what it meant is clear that I should not have been having sex in the first place. But I didn't know what he was talking about. I'm like, $500 for what? And he's like, well, for an abortion. And I was like, oh, is that what you want me to do? And he was like, yeah. And he kind of, like, I knew him well enough that even just by hearing his voice, I knew it was like, duh. Like, that kind of moment of just like, what else would you do?
Yeah.
And growing up, like anyone in my family will say, was a very strong person, a very confident person, very opinionated. And in that moment, it just all like went away. I just felt so small, and I was just like, okay, I'll talk to you later. And looking back now, if I could, go back, and I would tell myself, like, stand up for yourself, like advocate for yourself, advocate for your child, and say, I at least deserve a conversation. It shouldn't just be one person's say. So that week, I set an appointment to actually go and confirm, like, with blood work and everything. And we just argued that whole week about what I was going to do. I was wishy-washy. And
so it sounds like you were wanting it to be a conversation that you could actually process with this person.
Yes.
And there was no processing with him.
At all. And I want to give grace because he was 21, and I don't know if he, like, I don't know if he'd ever had that type of experience before, but I would have been open. I just wanted to at least talk about it. How do you feel? Like, I'm the one that is carrying the child. Like, I just wanted to talk about, process it, exactly what you said. And so I went to the doctors, and I will always remember this because, like I said, now I do have a daughter. So I compared my first experience to this one. And they did not show me the ultrasound screen. So they kept it completely turned away from me. And if any woman who has children know, when you go in, the first thing that they do, they turn the screen to you, and so you can see everything. They didn't. And they kept the screen turned away from me. And she was like, yeah, you're about 7-8 weeks along. And I specifically remember her saying, because I went in letting them know, like, I don't think I want to, keep the pregnancy. I want to know how far along I am.
And is that why? Are you assuming that's why they kept the screen away, because they knew what your intentions were?
So
was that like an act of kindness to you from their perspective?
My belief, because I don't know for sure, my belief is that if you see that there is a baby in there, if you hear a heartbeat, then you're just gonna. I would say 8 out of 10 women are gonna change their mind and are not going to want to go through with it. Because then you realize, like, wait, no, even though I'm early along, like, this is life. And what they told me was that it's just cells. It's just a cluster of cells. It's not an actual baby. And I think if I would have actually seen it, it would have, like, probably changed my mind. So my belief is that they kept the screen from me so that I could believe that it was really just a cluster of cells. And I'm not saying that they do that with, like, malintent. I'm sure that's their training, because it was a Planned Parenthood. So
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so it wasn't like a OBGYN.
Gotcha.
It was a Planned Parenthood, and they knew I was coming in to then schedule an abortion. So she told me I'm about 7-8 weeks along, and she had said to me, it'll be easy. You're still so early. And at the time, I was like, oh, okay. She meant in the sense of I don't have to go through a surgical, a DNC. But when I look back now, I'm like, wow, it will be easy. Like, oh, it'll be easier so early. And it just kind of like breaks my heart that that's how it's looked at. But she was right in a sense. I didn't have to go through a surgery. I ended up scheduling the abortion, and I went in very foggy, that whole experience. But I took a pill. They gave me a pill in the office, and then they sent me home with one. And they told me I would have like mild cramping and stuff. And I remember I did end up telling my mom, even though I was 18 and I made the decision, she had to take me. You can't take yourself. So she had to drive me. And I just remember like on the way home, they were like, you'll have some mild cramping. And it was excruciatingly painful.
Really?
Yes, it was really, really bad. I would say like
how long? Like how long did you experience?
Like 3 hours.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and I've had a baby, so I would say it's up there with contractions. Like
Gotcha.
it's really bad, and then you just get violently ill. So I was just like, I was ill for about an hour, and I did not want my boyfriend at the time to come with me to the abortion, so he didn't. But then when I got home, I had let him know like I'm home, it's done, and he came over and was very affectionate and loving and towards me, and I was shocked because that whole week leading up to it, he was just like ice cold to me, like cold shoulder, barely any communication. So in a way, this sounds very sick and twisted, but when you're in the world, your mind is sick and twisted. In a way, it felt like, good job. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was like I don't know how to explain it other than like a pat on the back. Like I did what he wanted. I've solved the problem. Now we're good to go. And it was probably about 2 weeks afterwards that I tried to bring it up to him for the first time, and I wanted to talk about it, and it was just like a blow-up fight.
Yeah.
So I tried about...
So he kind of wanted that to be in the past, not something that you discussed.
Yeah.
Not something that you guys have to deal with together.
Yeah. It was very much so, you made the decision, don't cry about it now. Like, no one forced you to do that. And that's true. One of the things that I learned through this whole process is there might have been other people contributing, but I do take full responsibility for the decision to have an abortion. I made that decision, but I would not be honoring myself and the whole experience if I didn't say that there was outside parties, Satan included, like just, feeding my head with lies that this pregnancy was a problem and the solution was the abortion. And that's kind of the narrative that I feel is out there in the world today. Like this whole well, it's my body, it's my choice. But I've now learned and believe that it is your body, but once that life is inside of you, that womb is that baby's womb. So that baby has just as much of a right to life as you do. But at the time, it's a very selfish way of thinking. Well, it's my body. Like I have control over all of this. And, I take full responsibility, but I was definitely experiencing pressure from outside, forces. So, it was just very contentious whenever I would try to talk about it. And so that's where the denial came into play. When I realized that I couldn't talk to him, it wasn't going to be a conversation. My dad is a pastor. I'm going to his church at this point. And
did he know?
No. And he does know now. Yeah, obviously.
Right.
He knows now. But at that time, he did not know. And so...
Right, that would be really lame if he found out on the podcast.
I wouldn't do that to you, Dad. I love you. I wouldn't do that to him. But no, I was very committed to keeping it a secret. I literally told myself, you will take this to your grave. And I just went into denial. And it's very common, I've learned now, because there's really no way to cope with it because you know that you're responsible. You've experienced this loss, but you don't give yourself permission to grieve. So there was no grieving. It was just back to life as normal. And I've spoken with women that they've had abortions and then gone and cheered at a football game 12 hours later. They've gone, you just go back to life as normal. And that's very, very dangerous because if you leave those, a wound that's not taken care of will fester. And that's exactly what happened to me. Because for 10 years, I kept that a secret. And only my mom and my stepdad and my boyfriend, those were the only people that knew. And then I did tell my husband when we got together. But that was it. So I was committed to the secret. And when I walked into Chosen that day, I was still in that place of denial, secrecy, just act like it never happened.
And were you suppressing it to the point where it also wasn't really affecting your life, at least that you were conscious of?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so It was something that you had, for lack of better words, successfully put off to the side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So when did you really start to I mean, well, I guess it sounds like there was something that happened at Chosen.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask, like, when did you start to rethink it and maybe pain coming out? But it seems like maybe some stuff just happened really quickly.
Holy Spirit just like...
There you go. There you
snatched me up. So I Chosen night 1, Pastor Irene Rollins, who you've had on the show, she delivered a word called Reframe Your Shame. And the whole time she was speaking, I was just like, wow, this is so powerful.
Gotcha. So this is Last Chosen.
Yeah.
This is the Last Chosen conference. Okay,
yes,
gotcha.
Sir.
Yep.
And so she was preaching and she was sharing her personal story about her struggle with alcoholism and that whole journey for her. And when she was speaking, I'm like, this is great. Like, I love this, but it doesn't apply to me. And all I kept telling myself was, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't have addiction. Like, there's nothing in my life I have to be ashamed about. Like, I just kept telling myself that, but in the back of my mind, I also knew, like, no, this message is for you. Like, you absolutely have shame, and you might not be aware of it, but you absolutely have it. And at the end of her message, she did an altar call and encouraged anybody to go up to the front. She's like, if you are bound by the shackles of shame and condemnation, I encourage you to come and get prayer. And so all around the room, I'm sitting in the top left side of the sanctuary. You know how big that place is. And so all around the room, I see these pairs of women coming out, and they're like the prayer team. And I look down and I see these 2 women, and I just, before I could even tell my body to go, I just started walking. And I don't know, at the time, I was like, why am I going to the furthest women from me? There's people right here. But I was just walking down there, and I don't know how to explain it, but I was not telling myself, go there. I just went.
Hey, real quick, because I just love stories like this. Have you ever thought, like, if at a certain point, maybe we're in heaven, if you could see the supernatural realm of what was happening at that time? Like, seriously, were there like a couple of angels that were just like, hey, we are drawing you forward? And
absolutely.
That's so cool.
I feel like that's what was happening. My guardian angel was like, come on, it's been long enough. It's been 10 years. Let's go. So I went to them, and they were like, hey, sweetheart, what's your name? And as soon as they asked me that, I lost it. Like, I fell to my knees. I was sobbing and just crying. And I don't know how long I was crying for, but eventually I did compose myself. And I didn't
Did you know what you were crying about?
Yeah. As soon as they asked me that, I was like, it's my abortion. And I didn't even tell them my name at first. I was just like, when I was 18 years old, I have an abortion, and I've kept it a secret for 10 years. Like, I literally said it that fast. Like, they were probably like, what? And so I said it again. I'm like, when I was 18 years old, I had an abortion. I've kept it a secret for 10 years.
And were you surprised what was going on in your mind? Because you were sitting there not really thinking about your abortion. Next thing you know, you're being drawn to these people to pray for, and you're talking about an abortion.
I don't feel like any of it was my doing. I really don't. Like, I didn't make a conscious decision to do that or to say those things. So as I'm talking, I'm hearing myself, and I'm like, what the... I was like, what the world? And I'm just talking to them, and I just remember, I don't know their names. Honestly, I don't. I look every Sunday. I'm like, where? I remember their faces. I'm like, where are these women? But I don't know their names. And the one lady to my right, she was like, oh, sweetheart. And she just hugged me like the most mothering, nurturing hug. And they laid hands on me, and they prayed. They anointed my head with oil. And they just, I mean, it was definitely a chain breaking prayer. Like, as they're praying for me, I just feel at first I'm like dejected. I'm standing there, like my head is down. And the one lady actually did like put her hand under my chin and kind of like raise my head. And so by the end of the prayer, I'm like standing up with my arms raised, like just, my whole physical being just like rose as they were praying. I could feel God's like love on me. And after they prayed, the woman to my right was like, sweetheart, I want you to know I've had 2 abortions. And she was like, God forgives me. He says he's set me free, and he's doing the same for you. And that's when I was like, that's why those angels pulled me to those 2 women, because I went to a woman that knew exactly how I was feeling.
Game changer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like someone who didn't go through that can't effectively pray for you.
Absolutely.
But when you know, wow, this person knows what I'm going through.
And I saw it in her eyes. Like, it was just like a connection. I will speak about the small group, but I ended up going through a recovery small group. And my leader says it's the sorority that no one wants to be a part of. And that really is what it is. Like, any woman that women that have been through that experience, all you have to say is like, I've been through that. And then there's just this connection. So yeah, I saw her, she saw me, like she saw my heart. And so they finished praying for me and I went to walk back to my seat. I don't know if you've ever like experienced it, but the presence of God was so heavy on me, like I could not walk. Like I was just dragging my feet. And so I kind of found a little corner where there wasn't a lot of foot traffic and I just knelt down there and I just sobbed till my makeup was all it was all jacked up and I just cried. And it was like it wasn't a sad cry. It was like a releasing, cry. And that's where it literally all started. And then God is so cool. Like he just knits everything together perfectly. So then I went home, I told my husband about everything and I'm like, I want you to hear her sermon. Like you got to hear this sermon. It's so crazy. So I went to look it up on the website. And as I'm looking around like the chosen website, I see this thing that says get connected. So I kind of get distracted because I have a mom brain. And I'm like, I want to, what is this about? And the very first thing that popped up was called Forgiven and Set Free Abortion Recovery Small Group. And I'm like, what? Like they have a small group for this? And I clicked on it and the small group was starting that Thursday. So a week from the day that I had found it. And so I was like, oh, I'm registering for this. Like I'm signing up. And I did.
Yeah.
And I did. I don't know if you want me to get into that, but that 10-week small group is really like, I definitely believe I received healing that day with that prayer, but going through that small group made me understand everything I went through as a result of the abortion, that I didn't even connect to it, and taught me how to accept God's forgiveness and walk in freedom. And I don't feel like I was truly, in John it says, who the Son sets free is free indeed. I don't feel like I was truly able to say that until the conclusion of that small group. Yeah.
So I bet from your perspective, I think I'm stating the obvious. You can look back, and even though this stuff wasn't on the forefront and it wasn't conflicting, now Peyton can look back at Peyton then and be like, yeah, I had stuff that I wasn't dealing with and it was affecting me.
Oh, yeah. I think the number one thing that I saw in myself, and also like it's kind of crazy how the effects seem to be the same across the board. Like any woman that I've talked to that has an abortion, that has had one, can kind of relate that you just harden your heart. Like you kind of just become a very cynical person. You become very hostile towards God, even though it was your decision, your doing. Like you just become very, very hostile. So even though, during those 10 years, I was definitely in denial and I was not living right, I still was going to church. I was still trying to pursue a relationship with God, but I could only get so far. Like I feel like there was a wall that was kind of in the way because I wouldn't let God touch it. Anytime he tried to bring it up to me, I had the nerve to tell him to leave it alone. I don't want to talk about it. Like anytime he would start to bring back memories or something, I was completely closed. Sorry. I was completely closed off to it. And your relationship with God is really like your relationship with a person. If you have a spouse and you have a skeleton in your closet, it's going to affect your relationship with them because you're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to achieve like true intimacy. And so that's how I felt. Like I felt like when I said, I love God and I know he loves me, I wasn't being truthful because I didn't feel like he loved me anymore. I felt like I had committed the ultimate sin that was like unforgivable. Yep. So definitely saw it in my relationship with God. I saw it in my relationship with people. I just kind of felt like everybody was out to get me, like a victim mentality. Like things were happening to me. I didn't have any power and authority. Multiple facets of my life.
Would you say for women in the church that something like this is a tougher share when it comes to small groups? So just imagine a small group where it's just like, hey, we're going to try to encourage everyone to be a little vulnerable and just talk about some things that you struggle with or maybe something in your past. Someone could say, sometimes on a Friday night, I find myself having one beer too many, or I binge Netflix, or I have lustful thoughts. I really need to get those things in line. And then someone says, I had an abortion. that kind of stops everybody a
Yeah,
little
it
bit
does.
more than
It
anything
does.
else.
Yeah.
And I hear that you have been set free from the guilt, but today, here in 2024, that still feels heavier
It does.
in a group environment. Like,
Yeah.
would that be accurate?
Yeah, you're spot on with that. In my opinion, I think that there are like acceptable sins where like alcoholism, like everyone's had a drink, you know, in a context, most people have had a drink and can be like, yeah, I can totally see how you could have one too many, or, you know, lust. Like I know that's very, very common, men and women that struggle with pornography. So I feel like there's like certain sins that are more acceptable. And then and it's crazy because 1 in 4 women have had an abortion. So it's
1 in 4.
Yes,
Wow.
sir. Yeah. And so I feel like it should be one of, like, a sin is a sin in God's eyes. But I think that there is, for myself, I think that you can look at yourself and be like, that's horrific. Like, you've shed innocent blood. And how, in a natural sense, that does not weigh up to, I have a few too many drinks. So for me, in the beginning, that is why I felt like I have to keep this a secret, because everyone will look at me and be like, you're a horrible person. You never knew God. You never loved God. Like, you're a fraud because you've done this horrific thing. And I think for women in the church that have had this, that is why I think I would encourage them to specifically go to like an abortion recovery small group first, because through that, one, I was able to talk to other women who have been through the same thing. And we talked about things that we would not feel comfortable sharing with anybody else. But two, you start to understand that your testimony and the mess that you've been through truly can be used to bring glory to God. And when you get to a point where you realize that when I die and I have my day of judgment and I stand before the Lord, He's not going to ask me, well, what did so-and-so think about you? The opinions of others are not going to matter. What people said to me or about me is not going to matter. What I did with what God gave me is going to matter. And so I believe that I'm at a point where I share it with anybody who the Holy Spirit tells me to share it with, because I know it's going to bring Him glory. But I know it's a very hard place. If you still kind of are struggling with that shame and guilt, it's very hard to just open that up to anyone, especially, no offense, to men. Because I do think that it's so crazy, because everyone that I know has had pressure from the father. I know one person who had it, and the dad did not want that to happen. But with men, they kind of look at you in this way. I've experienced it. They look at you in this way of like, well, how could you? Like, women are made to be mothers. How could you? Whereas with women, I feel like they understand a little bit more, because they understand like how scary it is to be pregnant and to have no plan and no support and just be like, I'm out here on my own, to feel that way. So it can be very daunting.
That's important insight.
It can be very daunting, but
yeah,
I think once you have real freedom, you can just share it, and however the person receives it, you don't take ownership of that. You don't feel responsible if they give you a weird look. You just leave it, and it's just okay.
Yeah, and I think it's impossible for people to probably not, and I think you articulated well how, this does feel differently than having an extra drink, for instance. But bottom line, the common thread, no matter how you see any of these things, and I hope people are picking up on this, is every single situation, there's a real person and a real story.
Yeah.
Because it's just so easy to say issue, and then let's look at the numbers.
Yep.
And it's like every single number is a story.
Yeah.
And I bet you if you heard every single story, I'm not saying it would change your mind about anything as far as the issue, but it would certainly broaden your perspective of, these are real people going through real things, making real good and bad decisions, have real regrets, just like any of us.
Yeah. And I would like to add on to that I believe that you are either fathered by the Heavenly Father or you are fathered by the father of lies. So if your relationship with God is not solid, when you get into a situation like this, it is so easy for lies to take root and for you to believe them and to come into agreement with them. And so what I have seen is that a lot of women that have unplanned pregnancy, teen pregnancy, it's very, very easy to feel like this will ruin my life. That like this is the worst thing that could happen to me. And you just get these lies from the father of lies, Satan, calling you out, and they take root and you believe them. And so instead of seeing it as a gift of life, you are making a decision from the lens that this will ruin my life. So it's not just, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's not just like, I will say this, you can cut this out if you want to. Some people do use abortion as birth control. And that's devastating. Like, you should have responsible sex. In my situation, I did use birth control. I still ended up pregnant. And so a lot of times what I see is that it is just a unplanned, devastating, thing. And the decision is made out of almost being like a wounded animal backed into a corner of feeling like I don't have another option. And you're so blinded by that, you can't see there are options. There is adoption. There is having the baby and seeing, God work through your life, because God, I fully believe God will provide for every circumstance that is in your life. And I know so many women that were like, I didn't, I considered abortion, but then I had my baby and they saved my life. So I will just say, I think a lot of the women that I have met have made the decision from a place of complete deception and not a in Romans, it says, if you are governed by the flesh, it leads to sin and death. If you are governed by the Spirit, it leads to life and peace. A lot of us, when we are making that decision, are governed by our flesh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap it up here. And yep. I don't know if this is a tough question. Like, do you feel connected to this being?
Yeah. So I do. I feel that when I went through the Forgiven and Set Free abortion recovery small group, we did a lot of work on not distancing ourselves from what happened. So a lot of us, myself included, will say, I terminated my pregnancy. And for 10 years, that's what I had told myself. I terminated my pregnancy. When you go through this group, you actually have to voice that I killed my child. And that was really hard. That was a hard week for me. I kind of shut down that week and thank God for my small group leaders, because, I do think if you're going to go through healing that trauma, you should do it with people, because it's very easy to just be like, this is too much, I'm done. But they helped me with that, and I was able to voice it. I was able to pray and ask the Holy Spirit, what gender was my baby? Like, are they okay? Are they with you? And I think that I do think that the Holy Spirit was kind enough to me to like comfort me and letting me know like that my baby's in heaven.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you don't have to say sorry.
I think that you can kind of go through a lot of cognitive dissonance when you make a decision that so goes against who you are as a person. And then when you come to terms to it, when you turn around and face it head on, the healing that happens is beautiful, but it is a lot of pain, And I don't think I will ever, until I get to heaven, feel I don't have pain about it, because I do believe that I was meant to be a mother. And now that I have my daughter, like I said earlier, I got pregnant out of wedlock. And when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, I don't care what you do. You don't have to marry me. You don't have to be here. I'm having this baby, because I've been through it. And I know the trauma that comes afterwards. Thankfully, my husband is the best man and stood by me, and we got married, and we did it because we loved each other and felt that we were called, not because we had a baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that you do feel a pain, but it's like, it's good. Like, you go through so long just being numb that when you can finally like face it, call it what it is, and look at it head on, I do believe that you are empowered by the Holy Spirit to conquer it. I think you are, you can overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. So I feel healed. I feel free. I feel like I've overcome. I can share my story, but I don't think I will ever not feel pain thinking about my child. And I think that that's okay. I'm kind of skeptical of people that sidestep feeling and sidestep adversity. Like, no, I think you should be okay with saying like, this is painful, but I know that they're with God, and I know that I will see my baby one day. And my hope is that either if there is a woman that is pregnant and unsure, that I could sway them. I'm going to be honest. That is my hope, is that I can sway them from making that decision and let them realize that there are many other avenues and there's so much support, especially here in the Low Country. We have the Low Country Pregnancy Center, which is God sent. And then if you've had an abortion, my hope is that my story could show you like there is healing, there's forgiveness, there's redemption, and God can make you a new creation if you surrender it all to Him. But I don't think that pain can ever be, I'm not sure the words, how to word it. I just don't think that you can ever go through acknowledging what you did and not feel just a little sense of pain.
Yeah. I would imagine it's redeemed pain, but it's still pain.
Yeah.
So now you're able to shed tears from a healed place, but it doesn't mean it's not painful.
Yeah.
Do you think that's
I think you you nailed it.
I did a good job?
Yes,
I did a good job? Awesome.
I see why you got this job.
I appreciate that. So do you look back on all of this and it's totally fine if I think we just talking about this and that it happened at Chosen, I think we all recognize, wow, got something happened special there. When you think about all of this, does the conference itself have a special place in your heart?
Oh yeah. And it's funny because I'm like not a conference person. I grew up in church, so I've been to many conferences, and I've felt that just the ones that I've been to have been more of like a pep talk, a motivational speech. Like I never, except for Priscilla Shirer and Beth Moore, those are the two conferences I went to that I was like, that was, the Holy Spirit was there. But Chosen, I'm like the biggest advocate for it because myself, but then I saw so many women just wrecked by God. And I feel like at Chosen, you can be vulnerable because you're surrounded by other women. And you just kind of feel like this sense of understanding, this, I can get down on my knees and cry and I don't feel like anyone's looking at me like, what is she doing? But the speakers that they choose, I believe that they intentionally create an atmosphere for you to meet with God. And I would recommend anyone go if you have a chance to go. If you don't have a chance to go, I would recommend looking online and finding those sermons, because I do think that had I not gone to that conference, I might have gone another 10 years. I don't know what would have happened, but it definitely was. It was Pastor Irene Rollins, like her sermon that really just convicted me. And I think God orchestrated it all for me to be here, everything. I do want to say, I did, after part of my abortion recovery was to confess, because in the Bible it says, confess your sins to one another, pray, and you will be healed. And so Thanksgiving of this past year, my dad and my stepmom came, and I confessed to them. I confessed to all of my family. I told everybody. And the fear of what people's reaction would be was so unfounded. Like, I was met with so much grace and understanding. My dad actually apologized to me and said sorry if he made it so that I didn't feel like I could talk to him. Yeah. Which was, he didn't need to do that. But, I was met with so much grace. And so I would encourage people that feel this heavy on them. I do believe that you should pray about who you should confess to. And then if the Holy Spirit leads you, I believe you should do so, because the freedom I feel like I lost 100 pounds. Like, there is nothing like actually being set free. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Peyton, I appreciate you sitting here and sharing. And I know going into stories like this isn't always the easiest thing, especially when everybody's going to eventually watch and listen. But you did a great job.
Thank you.
And I'm sure your story is going to mean a lot to a lot of people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And Ravens for the Super Bowl this coming year?
Jesus, please.
Hey, if you had to, if someone said, hey, you have to skip one Chosen conference, but you'll get a Super Bowl in return, would you give up one of them?
Absolutely not. You're not going to trip me up. Absolutely not.
Not today, Satan.
No. That was a good question.
You've been listening to the Things You Won't Hear on Sunday Seacoast podcast. In the show notes, you'll see a link to our Facebook group page. Also, we'd love for you to consider subscribing so you get these episodes downloaded right when they come out. Thanks so much for listening.